for teachers who have queries about delivering Edexcel International Science qualifications. You might just have seen a message pop up to say that this meeting is being recorded. I believe that you will have access to that recording if you attend, to look back over it later. So yes, it is being recorded, and you might see in the chat, my colleague Chelsea Pateman has just answered that. So Chelsea is the product manager for international science qualifications. That means that she's responsible for the development of these new modular routes through the international GCSE courses, and she's really the expert on them. She's going to be in the background responding to your questions in the chat. You might see there's a Q&A feature. If you're familiar with Zoom meetings, you'll know that there's a Q&A as well as the chat, to allow everybody to see each other's questions and the answers to them. We'd like you to use the chat for your questions today. Please keep your microphones muted unless we sort of invite you to unmute and talk to us, because I think otherwise it might get a bit too noisy with 35 people in the meeting. But yeah, please do ask questions in the chat as soon as they occur to you, and Chelsea will keep an eye on them. She may unmute herself and interrupt me to maybe correct anything that I get wrong, or to just draw my attention to a question that it's worth me answering. And we'll aim to have plenty of time towards the end of the hour to talk about your questions and see if there's anything else that you'd like to know that we haven't already explained in the presentation. So I'll just start properly in a second. I'll just say that here in Oxford, in England, it's rather sunny. It's been a very wet winter and early summer for us so far, but my blinds are not quite keeping the sun out, so apologies if a beam of sunlight causes me to kind of move my head around a little bit. I'll try and keep out of it. But I think without further ado, we'll get on with the presentation. Just got a few more people joining us. So all about International GCSE Chemistry, the modular route. Now, some of you may already be teaching linear International GCSE course. Some of you might be unfamiliar with that and might be new to GCSEs altogether. So this presentation will aim to kind of explain the structure of the course and the way the assessment will work, whatever your familiarity. So linear versus modular assessment. Why choose one or the other? Well, the GCSE courses that we have available to students here in the UK have all been linear for the last few years, and so have the international science GCSEs up until now. And that means that all of the assessment happens at the end of the course. There's no opportunity to resit individual exams. You can resit, but you'd have to redo all the exams the following year effectively. However, we know that it can be better for many students and teachers, for that matter, to spread those exams out and take them at different points through the course, which is the modular approach to assessment. So you still have the option of teaching the linear courses. They're not ending, they continue. And so they're the same 2 years usually. They're really designed to be 2-year courses, but some schools spread them over 3 years with the exams at the end. So those linear routes still exist. But we now have, starting next year, for first teaching in September, first exams next summer, in May, June 2025, these modular routes, which we're talking about today. Whichever route you choose, the exams will take the same amount of time overall. Teachers spend the same amount of time teaching, and really they're very similar in terms of the content of the course and everything else about them. So it's really just this assessment route that's changed, as we'll discuss further in this presentation. So this slide is just comparing a little more the modular with the linear route. And as this box in the middle points out, it's actually we're the only exam board that's offering this modular route to international GCSE qualifications. So it's something we're quite excited about, and we know that lots of schools and teachers are very interested in. So in Modular, we have separate units, which can be taken at different exam series, at different points during the course. Compare that with the linear route, where all the exams have to be taken together in one exam series. For both of these routes, there are no tiers of entry. Some of you may be familiar with some GCSE courses where there are more challenging higher tier papers to allow access to the top grades, and lower tier or foundation papers for students who are just aiming for a grade 4. We don't have those for either of these routes. All the exams are the same, which actually makes things quite a lot simpler for teachers. So for the linear route, we have grade boundaries based on the raw marks, the actual number of marks scored overall on the two papers combined. Whereas for the modular route, we have something called a uniform mark scale. And if you're not familiar with that, it's something that's worth briefly discussing. It's to allow each unit to contribute the amount that it's designed to the overall grade. So the percentage of raw marks that the student actually gets on the paper is converted into a different score, which is called the uniform mark scale score. And those points go forward to the overall grade. And that allows students to resit individual modules. And even though the paper is a slightly different paper with slightly different grade boundaries, it will contribute in the same way. The modular route allows students to resit individual units, which is one of the great advantages. Whereas in the linear route, you'd have to resit all of the exams together in one exam series if you wanted to resit them. Once a student has all their unit results for the modular route, they can then choose to cash in, which means that they actually gain the qualification, but they don't have to do that until they're satisfied that they've got the mark that they want overall. Whereas for the linear route, you always have your grade awarded when you've sat the papers, whenever that is. I'll just pause to have a quick look at the chats and just check whether there's anything that needs answering before I go on to this slide. So we have a question here. I think Chelsea's already answered. Yes, so Unit 1 and Unit 2 will be available in June 2025. So it is possible for students to actually complete the GCSE 1 year from now by taking all those units together. That was a question that I had from a student recently, actually. Yeah, so if you have a look back at the chat, Chelsea's answered some other questions about the availability of exams. So November and June series, and I think we're going to have a bit of a clarification of that here. So if we look at this timeline on screen, we have the start, the sort of formal start of teaching for these modular routes coming up in September, in a couple of months' time. So the 21st of March next year in 2025, that will be the entry deadline. And EOL, if you're not familiar with it, is Edexcel Online. That's the portal that your exams officers will use to make the entries, and which you can log into to access secure materials like locked papers and so on. First exams coming up in June, a year from now. And Unit 1 and Unit 2 will be available, but most likely most schools would be looking to enter students for Unit 1 at that point, having had a year of teaching. Then the result will be available for that in August, continue teaching in September. The option of entering for Unit 2, or for that matter, resitting Unit 1, then comes up, and you could take the June exam for Unit 2. But perhaps having reset Unit 1 if necessary in November before that. And then in August, results day and the overall grade, if a cash-in code has been used by the exams officer making the entry. So benefits, why would you want to take a modular approach? So some of you will have already decided that you're going to, others may be still considering. Well, from the point of view of students, there's a lot of focus around the world now on the stress that young people are under, and sitting all of your exams in one go is obviously a very stressful thing. So the vast majority of students greatly prefer, in terms of their well-being, the option of spreading their assessment out. They have more opportunities to demonstrate their skills and abilities. They can learn a lot from doing their Unit 1 exam, for example, seeing how they did, maturing the students based on that experience before they perhaps resit it. And they can take exams when they're ready. For teachers and for parents, the feedback that you get from students actually sitting real exams, having them marked by examiners, having actual exam results midway through the course can, of course, be extremely helpful. Spreading the burden of administering exams can be helpful for schools in other ways. And it can also ease some financial burden on families. Okay, so we've got some slides here that go into some detail about the structure of the courses. I'll just let you have a look at that for a second before I talk about it. So if you're not familiar with GLH, it stands for guided learning hours. So it's the recommended amount of classroom time effectively for these courses. Some schools will give it considerably more. A few might give it less. There's no requirement for you to teach a certain amount, but approximately 120 hours of teaching for a single GCSE, and around double that, of course, for the double award. If you're not familiar with double award, it's a biology, chemistry and physics GCSE, which is double weighted. So students receive 2 grades. For example, the top grade is 9-9. The next grade down is a 9-8, then 8-8, and so on. So it's 2 GCSEs, which between them cover all 3 sciences. It's also available through the linear route. Through the linear route, as you may know, some of you will be teaching it at the moment, the exams taken by the double award students are the same as the paper 1 exams taken by the biology, chemistry and physics students. That's not true for this new modular route. There are separate Unit 1 and Unit 2 exams, which are different to the Unit 1 to 6 exams for the double award students. A little more on that later. And here we've got a list on this slide as well of some of the key resources for you to find on the qualification website, which we'll talk about more in a second. In particular, there are new specifications there now, getting started guides and planners, which Chelsea's been working on, scheme of work for you and with suggested activities. The books are, Chelsea will correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but they're the same book for both the linear course and the modular course, because the content is the same. And if there's any sort of materials that you're looking for on the website that are not quite there yet because they're still being developed, then all the support materials for the linear qualification are really very relevant, and it's very sort of small edits that are being made because of the order of the topics being slightly different, which we'll again discuss more in a second.
Sorry, Tim, to interrupt. There's a hand up.
Oh, thank you. I had missed that. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? Is it Wessel? Are you able to unmute your microphone and talk to us, or alternatively, you could ask your question in the chat? There may be a technical problem preventing that from happening. Okay, so we'll move on. But yeah, do please put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question. Chelsea will let me know. I'm correct about the textbooks, aren't I? I just had a sudden moment of doubt. They're the same textbooks available for both qualifications. Yes.
So just to add, there isn't a modular textbook available at the moment, but in the schemes of work, in relation to each lesson, the pages from the current textbooks have been mapped out to support teachers. So the content is all exactly the same to support in that manner. So yeah, you were correct.
Great, thank you. Okay, so back to this slide then. And you can see how the units 1 and 2 for chemistry have the content split between them. As I've said before, it's exactly the same subject matter, same content as in the linear route, just with a slight reordering of the topics. And as you see from the top of this table, Unit 1 for chemistry is the same as Unit 3 for those students who are taking the double award. For them, Unit 1 and Unit 2 are the biology units, Unit 5 and Unit 6 are the physics units. And there is some additional content, which is shown here with a single asterisk and is in bold. So extraction and uses of metals is something which is assessed in the chemistry Unit 1, but it's not in the double award Unit 3. And that's to allow you to deliver the double award in less teaching time. So it's the same demand of qualification. The questions are just as challenging, but it's for students who want to study all 3 sciences, but don't want to use up 3 GCSEs worth of teaching time because they want a broader range of subjects. The other thing to note here is that we have some content which has a double asterisk, and that's assessed in both Unit 1 and Unit 2. And this is really content which, although it appears in the specification in Unit 2, the periodic table, understanding chemical formulae, equations and calculations is so fundamental to chemistry that it's actually assessed in both units. Okay, I shall move on to the next slide. So in terms of how you design your courses, plan sequences of lessons, respond to how your students are doing, there's really no huge differences here between the linear and the modular routes. So the same considerations that you would have anyway, you'll be applying to this slightly different topic order. But of course, with the option of those November exams and also exams at the end of the first year in May and June, and the possibility of combining papers in different ways. So that's really the new thing to consider. So here we've got some examples of different ways that you could design the assessments, and it's really flexible depending on the needs of your students and the circumstances in your school. So you could take Unit 1 at the end of Year 10 and Unit 2 at the end of Year 11. If you're not familiar with those terms, those are the year groups that we refer to here in the UK, where we have a numbering system that starts with primary school, Year 1 for 5-year-olds, I believe. And so yeah, the year 11s are the students that become 16 in that year. And it's 16-year-olds at the end of Year 11 who generally complete their GCSEs in the UK. I'm sure that's the same in many of your schools. Example 2, you could offer a reset opportunity in November, otherwise that's the same. Or you could wait until students are a little older, a little more mature. In example 3 here, don't put them in for an exam at the end of the first year, but wait until November of their second year of study, and then they could sit both units at that time. Of course, some of you will have school years that run January to November, and so that would be your preferred option, I imagine. But then there is, of course, the option then of resitting anything they needed to the following June. I'm just going to pause there and have a very quick look at the chat, see if there's anything there that I should be highlighting. So is year 10 the same as grade 9? Yeah, I mean, certainly if your year numbering system is based on American grades, then I would say so. Yes, we have an extra year in the UK. Our final secondary school year is year 13, whereas it's 12th grade in the United States, I believe. Okay, let's move on. So this slide is about progression between different Edexcel qualifications. I imagine some of you will just be using our courses for GCSEs, but others will be also offering international A-levels with Edexcel. Some of you will be familiar with our I lower secondary and I primary courses as well. And this slide just gives an example of how there are some strengths to following the same suite of qualifications all the way through. There's no pressure to, there's no reason you can't just offer the GCSE course from Edexcel, Pearson Edexcel as a standalone. But you could, if you have a primary school attached to your school, be starting them with the iPrimary course, understanding that different substances change state at different temperatures, just to take one point from the specification. I lower secondary is based on what we call Key Stage 3 here in the UK, which is 11 to 14-year-olds. So it's the pre-GCSE course. So know that structure of an atom in terms of position of subatomic particles is the relevant point there. At GCSE, we know that a covalent bond is formed between atoms by the sharing of a pair of electrons, and then this then feeds into these IAS and international A-level specification points about electrostatic forces, giant atomic structures, simple molecules, bond enthalpy, and so on. So there's an advantage there if students are following the same route through in terms of them following a suite of courses that have been designed to support progression. Okay, so this is now a little bit of help in terms of navigating your way around the website. So if you go to International GCSEs on the Pearson qualifications page, you then have this alphabetical list. You can choose chemistry from there. You'll then have a choice between the linear and the modular page. So of course, we're here today to talk about the modular route, but you will be able to equally well find the linear pages, which, as I mentioned earlier, have, because they've been running for many years, a really large number of resources there. And Chelsea and her team are working hard to adapt those and to eventually have the same rich array of supporting materials dedicated for the modular course. But while you're planning now, it may well be useful to look at what's on the linear qualification page, because there'll be some very useful things on there. Then once you get to the page for the modular GCSE chemistry course, you'll then be able to download the specification. It's this orange document here. That is, if you're not familiar with these courses, that is the key document which explains what students need to know, what they can be assessed on. And so it's a really important one to be using as a teacher planning to deliver the course, ensuring that you cover everything and that students are familiar with the language it uses, because that will be the language used in the exam questions. On the right of this latest screenshot here, you have this course materials box where you can find links to the sample assessment papers, which are the only papers available currently. Of course, there will be past papers coming as soon as students have actually sat papers, and we'll talk more about how you can use Exam Wizard and the linear papers for mock exams and so on in a few moments. But the teaching and learning materials is where you will find increasing numbers of other support documents. So there it is highlighted. That's a key place to go for more of these resources. there we go. So if you follow the specification and sample assessments link, you can then find the specification there. Again, that's what they look like, just so you can find them a bit more easily when you're navigating this website. And there's a separate specification for the double award route if you're teaching the chemistry part of that. So if you're still making a decision as a school about which route you offer, then there's some helpful information in the specification about why you might choose the modular. This qualification at a glance page is extremely helpful as well, setting out the length of exams, when they're available, which topics are covered in each exam. And then there's a very useful page here for understanding how the double award and the separate biology, chemistry and physics GCSEs relate to each other. And this, for example, shows that they are different exams for the double award, just a shorter version of each unit, basically, which assesses 2/3 of the content rather than the full content of the chemistry, biology or physics GCSE. Okay, a little look at the sample assessment materials. These are the sample papers. And again, you can find those by following that specification and sample assessments link on the qualification page. And then there's one big PDF that has all the sample exam questions and mark schemes in. So for the separate International GCSE Chemistry, we have two 90-mark exam papers, each 1 hour 40 minutes long, and each worth exactly half of the full qualification. As this box states, there are common questions between double award and separate. So where they're equally appropriate for both, we'll use the same questions. Double award, 60-mark papers, 1 hour and 10 minutes long, and a total of 6 papers, as we've said before. And again, they're all equally weighted. And then we've got a graphic here in the middle, which shows the codes for each of these exams. So for WSD, for the science double award, 1B, 1C, 1P, and so on. D5, D6. So units 5 and 6 are the physics, units 3 and 4 are the chemistry, units 1 and 2 are the biology. Getting started guides, another really useful resource. These are all free resources available to you now on the qualification page. These ones are under teaching and learning materials in that course materials box. Under the guide heading. So you need to expand these headings. That's what the getting started guides look like. They contain introductions to the course, key content, for example, formulae, key information about the assessments, and changes to be aware of. So we do recommend that you spend a bit of time with the getting started guides. And we also have example schemes of work. And these are just a couple of screenshots from those showing what you have. So the title, the specification points to be covered in the lesson, some suggested activities, including practicals, page references for the textbook to help you use that. I should say that there's no requirement to use the Pearson Edexcel endorsed textbooks or published textbooks. You don't need to use any paid for resources to deliver this course. You can simply use your own materials that you develop and the free resources on the website. But we will be talking a bit about the resources that you can purchase as well, if you choose to. So those are the example schemes of work. And again, you find them under teaching and learning materials, and then you expand that section. And I'm sorry, I was talking through that without using the extremely helpful animations here. But yeah, here are the various sections highlighted to help you find your way around that document when you have a look at it. And we've been making the most of some of these excellent resources, well-respected educational organizations that provide some really useful additional guidance, which are linked from that scheme of work document. There's also some information here about teaching hubs, which are the kind of digital resource packages that you can subscribe to if you choose to help you make the most of those Pearson resources if you choose to use them to help you deliver the course. And finally, I've not mentioned these, some guidance here in these last two sections of the skills that will be assessed through the exam, which you can be developing in that particular lesson. And a final point here, as is so important, there are lessons built in within the example scheme of work for you to do consolidation, to assess students and give them feedback on their practice assessments. And I've said it a couple of times now, but worth repeating, you will find lots of useful resources on the linear qualification page that are equally relevant because the content is identical between the two routes. So course planners, like the scheme of work, they're a guide for you. You don't need to use them. You don't have to follow these activities or these sequences. As long as you deliver the specification and students know that, you can teach the course how you like. But you may find these useful as well. Again, they're in teaching and learning materials. Then there's a course planner heading. And these are another document to help you planning how to deliver the course. Information on practicals. As is shown in this example over on the top right here, where that red arrow is, we have some content in bold and with a C following the specification code. And those are the topics that are only for the separate International GCSE Chemistry students. Those doing the double award don't need to cover those bold statements. Spec points and practicals. Practicals are all in italics, making them a little bit easier to locate, and exam and revision time built into the planner as well. So this final bullet point here, the double award course planner doesn't go from unit 1, which is biology, and work its way all the way through to unit 6 physics. So instead it's about co-teaching these courses and building up this interdisciplinary knowledge. Chelsea, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about that last point.
In relation to the double award course planner, sorry, are you referring to? Yeah, it's more a case of that's just I've developed it just to give you an idea of how you actually might want to teach it if you don't want to teach just unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, unit 5, unit 6, based on, what are the absolute fundamental bits that students need to know that will help them access other content. So it's by no means prescriptive, but it's just a suggestion for how else it could be done. For context, I was a science teacher for 10 years, culminating in a trust where I had to manage lots of science departments. So it's been done sort of from a subject specialist point of view.
That's helpful. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I've just been having a quick look in the chat to see what questions are coming up there. I've been talking about separate chemistry, and someone's just clarified that that's what you might know as triple award. I think technically it's not a triple award, because that would imply it was a single qualification that was worth 3 GCSEs, whereas actually they're separate GCSEs. So you could just do one of them. For example, you could just study biology. Here in the UK, students always study all 3 sciences, certainly in our state-funded schools, which the vast majority of students go to, and in the vast majority of the independent schools as well. But in your part of the world, wherever it is, it may be that you have students who just want to study biology, and that's fine. So yeah, when I say separate, you might know it as triple, because you might have students that always do all 3. Okay, let's move on. A bit about additional support. So Exam Wizard, it's been mentioned, I think, in the chat. Some of you will know it well. This is our free resource for searching banks of past paper questions, constructing your own exam papers for use as mocks, and so on. And it's now set up so you can search for sort of modular root topics. They're the same questions as linear, but because the same question style will be asked, they're equally relevant, and you can use that to construct practice tests and so on. Then these are the paid for resources. We've got textbooks, as we've mentioned, available. You're also welcome to look for textbooks and resources via the publishers as well. There's some good ones out there. But if you do go for the Pearson textbooks, then they come with, well, Chelsea may be able to offer a bit more insight into this, but the Teaching Hub is the digital package that you have the option of purchasing along with the print textbooks. So you have digital access to the textbooks for yourselves and for students, but also all kinds of additional resources like practice tests and so on, and exam preparation materials. And the best person really to talk to you about that would be your local Pearson consultant, who you can find through our website, or you can contact me and I can help put you in touch with them.
I'm going to add as well, with the teaching hubs, they've also got lesson plans, sort of common misconceptions, resources and things like that to help you. It is a paid for resource, but it's there if you want it.
Yeah, thank you. So in the course materials section, once again, we're going back to the teaching and learning materials. We have this International GCSE Science Linear to Modular Specification Numbering Guide, which is to help you kind of navigate your way through the complexities of the specification. If you're familiar with linear, for example, and you want to and you're adapting your plans, that would be very helpful, I think. And finally, the specification mapping document, which is to support centres who are new to Pearson Edexcel. So all of those under course materials, teaching and learning materials. So do have a good look at that website. Core practical guide as well. So as you will know, if you're already teaching the linear, we have a number of practicals which you're not required to do. It may be that some of them are difficult in your particular context, in your school or your part of the world, but students will be assessed on their understanding of those practical activities in their exams. So it's recommended that you do those practicals, and the core practical guide is a really useful PDF document that has equipment lists in an appendix at the end, which is very useful for your technicians, but also example exam questions and mark schemes, so you know what kinds of questions will be asked about those practicals. Okay, so we're pretty much at the end of our presentation, and so we'll just pause here, and feel free to raise a hand if you'd like to unmute and ask a question, or put it in the chat. I'll just pause and give you time perhaps to have a little bit of a look at the chat and see if a question you have has already been answered there. Here we have my contact details. So some of you will have been receiving subject advisor updates. They're actually written for all our science qualifications by my colleague Irene. Some of you will know her. Since October, I've been working on the international qualifications, giving her a bit more time to focus on the UK qualifications, but she's continuing to write the updates. So do sign up for those. If you haven't yet, they're a very useful source of information about all of our science qualifications and key dates and so on, and things to be aware of. You can also book a Teams call with me via that bottom link there. This is on the qualification webpage, the one that we've been talking about for the last few slides. And that allows you to basically just go in and find a time that works for you and book a 10-minute or a 25-minute face-to-face video call. So please do take advantage of that if you have questions and you'd like to discuss anything to do with the courses. You can also use teachingscience@pearson.com to email, and those come through to me as well, and I pass them on to other people if I can't answer them myself. So I'll pause there for a bit just to see if anyone would like to ask any questions.
Someone's asked if they'd be able to get a recording of this session, and someone earlier in the chat also asked if the slides could be made available. My understanding is that they will be available after the session, but Tim, correct me if I'm wrong.
Now, that's my understanding too, and the only reason that there's a slight doubt in my mind is that we've had quite a recent change to the way that our training events of this type are managed. So I'm not quite certain what the method is of getting those to you, but that's definitely how we normally operate with these sessions. So we'll do our very best to get both the slides and the recording shared with all of you. I've noticed a question in the chat about the international A-levels, and yeah, the A-level courses that we've been offering for the last 7 or 8 years are all modular as well, and in fact there isn't a linear international A-level option through edXL, and it works very well for A-level students. So if you're still a bit unsure about modular, it's new to International GCSE, but it's tried and tested in terms of our international A-levels, and actually UK GCSEs were all modular until I think was it 2017 they all changed. It was they were staggered, weren't they? But certainly early in my teaching career, it was all modular. Our GCSEs.
Yeah, they used to be a thing. Will be notified when the slides and videos are available? Tim, you might be better placed to answer that.
I believe you will receive an email with them. I can't promise, as I said, because we have some changes which are still quite new to the way that our training events are delivered. But my understanding and my strong hope is that you will receive an email with a link to download them. We have a hand up. Would you like to unmute? Is it Ada Gia?
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. So I asked Chelsea this question before. As you mentioned that in UK, they had the modular course earlier, right? One of my colleagues who worked in UK mentioned some university don't prefer the modular course. Is that true?
Oh, it's a really interesting question. So the change in the UK was one that was initiated by the government, and I think their motivation was to basically increase the sort of rigor and demand of the qualification. It's very unpopular with many teachers who felt that it wasn't really doing any such thing, because the modular GCSEs, the linear ones replaced, were perfectly rigorous, and lots of teachers felt that the modular route was fairer because it didn't punish students for having one bad day in the exam hall in the same way. Now, what universities think, you might come across this argument that universities might see, say, a top grade in a modular course as being a bit easier to achieve, and therefore preferring a linear one. But my personal view is that I think it's very unlikely that would be taken into account by a UK university anyway, because they're used to international students having international A levels, which are modular, and they're not disadvantaged by doing those. UK private schools, I know, would very much like to offer modular GCSEs, were they allowed to, which they're not, and they're very focused on getting their students into top universities. And actually, it isn't really any easier to get the top grades, because the way the qualification is designed is to ensure that it's just as rigorous as the linear. It's just arguably fairer for that reason, that if a student underperforms, then they have the option of resitting. So I think that's probably all I can say on that. But I think a good piece of advice is that you can always contact a university and ask them and say, like, what's your view on this qualification, and see what they say, because individual universities and individual admissions tutors might have different views. But yeah, I don't think it's something which is likely to be an issue personally.
Yeah, I just worry that there's no like official, I don't know, like in their admission website said that they don't accept the modular certificate, right? No.
So if
I
I've
mean,
understood,
sorry, Tim, you go.
Yeah, I mean, if I understood the question, there is definitely nothing from any of the universities that suggests that they would not be happy with this qualification. Chelsea, sorry, I was talking over you.
Yeah, I was going to say, so my understanding of being completely in agreement with Tim that this isn't going to be an issue is we had our phase 1 subjects released, and there was some work done around progress and recognition for further study, and nothing has been flagged. There is no information that my team's aware of, as in the whole international product team, that would indicate that universities don't accept this in the same manner as they would accept a linear. I'm happy to go do some further digging for you, if you would like some more information or maybe some documentation to support that. But that's mine and Tim's current understanding of the situation, that it will all be completely fine.
Okay, glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So yeah, we have a few more minutes if anyone else would like to ask anything.
Just responding to some of the questions in the chat this way, because it's a bit quicker. There are currently no sessions like this planned for A levels, but if that's something that you think you would like, if you just flag that with your more regional team, and that can then be passed on to the person in charge of the professional development, and then we can start looking into that. Can the student decide if they want to write modular or linear, even if the school is offering one mode of learning? I think that would very much depend on the context within your school, if you allow students to have that much choice, because it would then be the exams officer who would be responsible for making sure that the student was entered for either the modular route or the linear route. It is worth noting that if, for example, you had a student doing a linear course, and then maybe at the end of that first year of study, you thought, I'm going to enter them for the modular exams. If you have just followed the linear course where you've taught topic 1 and then topic 2, the students won't be able to sit the modular exam, because the way the content has been split, there will be content that's from topics that would be taught later on in the linear course. So it's fine to do it that way, but I think it would almost make more sense if you potentially want to switch between linear and modular, to almost teach in a modular way or in the order of the modular topics. And then if you want to enter students for modular exams, then you could, or at the end of the 2 years, the 3 years that you're teaching, you could then enter them just for all the exams then. So it just gives you a bit more flexibility to make sure the students have covered everything. Sorry, I've lost track.
There's a question in the Q&A. I'm not quite sure I understand it. It says paper 1 and P2 will be with the same names, not to be unit 1 and 2.
So in linear, the papers are referred, or the exams are referred to paper 1 and paper 2. In the modular route, they're referred to as unit 1 and unit 2. So if you're seeing something to do with units, that's modular. If it's papers, that's linear. I wish I could tell you the rationale, but I don't know the rationale. But hopefully that at least allows you to distinguish between the two. I don't think I've missed any other questions. So would their final result indicate that it is modular? So that was the conversation that was been had just a moment ago. On the actual certificate, it will not have the word modular or linear on there. So no is my tentative answer.
Yeah, and I did have a query about this actually, and it related to the university question that was asked just now. And of course, no actual certificates have been issued yet, so it took us a little while to establish this, but the response that came back from our colleagues within Pearson was that there would be nothing on the certificate that indicated whether it was a modular or linear route. And that underlines really that it is the same qualification, it's just a different route to the same GCSE. And a key principle behind it is that the standard is the same. So despite the fact that students have that benefit of being able to resit, it shouldn't be any easier, and it therefore shouldn't be looked down upon by anyone. Humaira, would you like to unmute?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Chelsea. First and foremost, I just like to say thank you so much for the session. It was very, very informative and I think much appreciated. My question, and I hope I'm not repeating myself, and if it was already answered, I'm apologizing in advance. I just wanted to find out, once a learner cashes in, so they're doing the modular course, they do the units and whatever, they retake it, their best results are taken, they cash in. And now they want to retake the exam for whatever reason. When they do retake the exam, do they now have to take the entire exam again? Or can they pick that, okay, I need to redo unit 1 from this point and then, cash in again, or do they have to do unit 1 and unit 2 again once they've reached that point?
That's a good question. I'll go first, Chelsea, and you can you can add or correct if you need to. But I can say with confidence that they, even after they've cashed in, they can just resit 1 unit and then they can cash in again. So that's the real advantage. If they cash in twice, it means that they have 2 certificates, they with maybe 2 different grades on. But there's really no disadvantage to cashing in, because they can always just resit a single unit to improve.
Okay, perfect. That I think is a good thing for the learners. I think it's really, really going towards helping them more than anything. And then just one last question. The exam wizard has the past paper questions, and from my understanding of the meeting, that's the only place and the portal where we can find past paper exam questions for Pearson, because I have looked, I haven't really found many sites out there. Am I correct in that?
Well, because there have yet to be any actual modular GCSE papers for science. That's correct, because what Exam Wizard is doing is it's allowing you to search the bank of linear past paper questions by modular topic, if that makes sense. And so they're equally valid to use in your mock assessments, for example, because the question style is the same. But there's nowhere where you will find actual modular GCSE papers for practice papers, because they haven't been created yet. And that's just the nature of a new qualification route. And it's the same whenever we introduce or any exam board introduces new qualifications generally, except for the sample papers that we mentioned that you will find on the qualification page.
I've just been on Exam Wizard during the session while we were here, just to have a look. And I see that they have a Unit 3 for chemistry. I am not sure what exactly am I seeing there. It says C3 chemistry in action. This may be a very, very ridiculous question, but what exactly am I seeing when I sift it to that? What is the C3 meaning?
That sounds like something that's out of date, in all honesty. So I'm just quickly trying to log in and double check it. The modular, so the developers are still working on setting up the modular aspect on Exam Wizard. So I have been told that that will be ready by September 2024, so ready for first teaching. If there is anything to do with modular up there now, sorry, my Exam Wizard isn't signing me in, then I imagine that's because the developers have accidentally said show as opposed to hide. But because Unit 3 doesn't exist in modular chemistry. And just to clarify, actually, because that links really nicely to another question that someone's asked. So for all the separate sciences or triple sciences, so just the biology, IGCSE, the chemistry and the physics, there is only a Unit 1 and a Unit 2. So there's only 2 exams. In relation to a Unit 3 and 4 and a 5 and 6, that's only relevant in double award. So if you teach separate award, you will only ever have to worry about Unit 1 and Unit 2. There's only more numbers that come into play when you start looking at double award.
Yeah, it is confusing, isn't it? So
yeah, it's not ideal.
Whichever route they take, the triple or the double, they do 6 exams in total. So one way of thinking about it, but they're longer exams if they're doing the triple. And because they're separate GCSEs, it's 1 and 2 biology, 1 and 2 chemistry, 1 and 2 physics, whereas for double award it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I think we're nearly out of time, Chelsea. Is there a final question we should talk about?
I can't. I've just answered the final one. My Exam Wizard is still not loading, so apologies. Are there examples out of... I'm not sure I understand the question.
Shireen, would you like to unmute and ask it that way? I wondered if the question was about whether there were like other ways other than the 3 examples we gave on that slide, which I'd say yes, those are just 3 examples. And the key point is that from June 2025 onwards, both units are available in June, November, June, November. So any way that you can imagine you could divide those units up, you can do, and then redo them and cash in and redo them and cash in again. So it's really up to you.
I was going to say, for example, you might have a 3-year Key Stage 4 course. You might decide to teach all of the content in the first 2 years and then enter your students for Unit 1 and Unit 2 then. And then for their last year of Key Stage 4, that might just be focused on one of the exams they did more poorly in. to bolster that. But it's completely flexible for whatever works for you, your context, your students' context, the school's context. So there's so much flexibility with it that I think that's what makes Modular such a great option.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we just got to 10 o'clock, so I think we'll round it up there. Thank you very much, everybody, for your excellent questions and for coming along today and making it a really good session for us. And thank you, Chelsea, for all your help.
Likewise, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for coming along.